Today we talk about a common misconception. Does IVF cause you to go into menopause because you're removing the eggs? I'm Dr. Mark Amols, and this is Taco Bout Fertility Tuesday. Every woman knows that they only have so many eggs. As you're told when you're young, once you get older, you run out of eggs and you can't have any more kids. So it makes sense then that a woman who goes through IVF, where we're taking eggs out of them, they would go into menopause earlier. But in reality, that is a common misconception. And today, we're going to talk about that. Now, as I mentioned, menopause is a point where you have fewer eggs in your body. Matter of fact, by the time you get to menopause, you probably only have about 1,000 eggs left. Now, what's interesting is you start with 2 million eggs when you're born. And by the time you hit puberty, you're down to about 350,000 eggs. And by the time you're at 35, you're down to about 35,000 eggs. And so it is true you are losing eggs through your life. You actually lose about 1,000 eggs per month. But what's interesting about menopause is it's not just about losing those eggs, but you're losing a lot of the good eggs. And there are eggs that are good and there are eggs that are bad, and life likes to use those good ones first. So menopause is not just losing eggs, but losing a lot of those good eggs. And so you are left with some of the poor quality eggs, and that can push you into menopause earlier. For example, if you are smoking does kill your eggs and specifically kills those good ones. And so someone who's smoked their whole life will likely go into menopause earlier, or will at least have severe diminished ovarian reserve at a higher chance than someone who is not smoking. Since the egg number does matter, people who undergo multiple ovarian surgeries can actually go into menopause earlier because a lot of their ovary has been removed. So there are women who have endometriosis who have had multiple surgeries and have lost so much of their ovary that they can go into menopause early. Now, obviously, if you remove the ovaries, you're going to go into menopause because you don't have them anymore. But even removing portions of the ovary over and over can lead to you going into kind of an early menopause. Now, there are other reasons that cause early menopause, such as people can have disorders that cause it. They can have things like treatments, such as cancer treatments, that can cause the ovaries to not work anymore. But specifically, we're going to be talking about egg number because that's the thing people are worried about with IVF. So what's interesting is to get pregnant, you only need to release one egg, and that's what your body does. But as I mentioned, to get to that one egg, you lose 1,000 eggs every month. And so to get to that one egg, multiple eggs grow, and eventually one ends up being the dominant one, called the dominant follicle, that releases, and then that is what you get pregnant with. But all the eggs that were growing beforehand, whether that is 12, 15, 20, those all disappear. And eggs even before that point disappeared under a process called atresia, where they undergo a death. Atresia is a normal process. It happens throughout our entire body in multiple cells, but for the ovary, it is very normal. Basically, you might be starting with 1,000 eggs every month, but to get to that one glorious egg, it undergoes this process to get that best egg. Now, in IVF, what we're doing is that group of eggs I told you about that eventually become the lead follicle that releases, those are the eggs that we're going after. So when we give you medication, what we're doing is we're forcing those other follicles to grow that usually would have just fallen out and weren't used. And so in some ways, we're not actually making eggs grow that weren't going to grow, but instead we're rescuing some of those follicles that were destined to basically just be gone. And so why this is important is because when we're talking about going to menopause early, it's important to understand that we're actually not removing the eggs that are not being stimulated. We're removing the eggs that were going to be lost anyways. So this is an important point. IVF does not use the eggs that are meant for future cycles. IVF is only using the eggs that your body was going to use for this cycle to release one egg. We just happen to be forcing the other eggs that would have undergone a process of atresia to keep growing so we can then take those out to improve your chances of success. This means that we're not forcing eggs that were meant for the next month for years ahead to grow. These are your own eggs that we're going to release this month regardless. And all we're doing is just forcing the ones that would have went down to not grow. That's important to understand. Again, we're not making eggs just grow randomly in your body. Matter of fact, there are some women who don't ovulate. Their egg reserve is so severe that they're almost in like an early menopause, and we can't help them because if they can't make an egg ovulate, then we can't make anything grow because we're only making the eggs that are already there grow. We don't make eggs grow from scratch. That is proof then that we're not making eggs grow randomly. We're only making the eggs grow that were already there. And this isn't just true for IVF. If you're doing IUIs, if you're doing IVC, whatever the treatment is, it's always important to know that you do not have to be worried about using up eggs that you could have saved for later. Because in all those situations, you're just forcing the follicles to grow that were already there, that you were going to lose that month and never would have kept. That's also true for people who are not ovulating. A lot of people think, well, I have PCOS, I'm not ovulating, so I'm just saving up all those eggs. Not true at all. Even though you may not be ovulating, which would only be saving you one egg per month, technically, those eggs still undergo atresia. You're still losing those 1,000 eggs per month. The main point of this podcast is I wanted to reassure people that you are not going to go into menopause earlier. You're not going to have reduced chances of having kids later, which is a very common concern for people who are donating eggs, because you're not losing the eggs that are the future eggs. You're just taking out the eggs that you were going to lose anyways this month. And so hopefully this is going to help someone feel more comfortable and not be worried about donating eggs or going through multiple IVF cycles, because you will not go into menopause early because of this. You may go into menopause early and that could just be a coincidence, but it would not be because you went through an IVF cycle. In summary, IVF and fertility treatments do not cause you to go into menopause early or cause you to have reduced fertility because you're using up your eggs. And that is because, as we discussed, although menopause is associated with fewer eggs, the eggs that we are removing, the eggs that are causing to grow, are the eggs you were already going to lose that month. Because every month your body selects a group of eggs, and then from that group it picks one, and the rest of them disappear. And in fertility treatment, we cause those eggs to keep growing, and then we remove them. And if we didn't, your body would have got rid of them anyways. And so there is no change in the timing of your onset of menopause or a decrease in fertility in the future. Hopefully this episode was helpful to someone who maybe was worrying about this. If you know a friend who's worried about this, or someone who wants to donate eggs and they're afraid that it's going to affect their chances in the future, tell them to listen to this episode and say, no, donate those eggs. You're going to help a couple and you have nothing to worry about because you're not actually using the eggs of the future. You're using the eggs of today. And as always, if you like this, please tell people about us. Give us a good 5-star review on your favorite podcast medium. And as always, come back again next week. I look forward to talking to you again next week on Taco Bout Fertility Tuesday.